Hello, you wonderful people. So for today's video, I'm going to talk about the official trailer that came out for Until Dawn, the movie. If you haven't seen it already, I'll include a link to it in the description. I saw the first look yesterday, so it gave me an idea of how they were approaching this adaptation, and obviously seeing that kind of utilized and getting to see it fully inside of the trailer kind of gave me an even better idea. So I should also start this off by being like, this discussion will probably most likely include spoilers for the Until Dawn game. So if you've never played it nor seen the story of it, or maybe just don't care, just know ahead of time that this will include spoilers, so you have been warned. So first and foremost, they talked about this during the first look, and that was just kind of my first, understanding of how they were approaching this. And they said instead of like adapting the story of the video game, they said they were expanding the lore. So immediately I was like, okay, so they're not going the Last of Us route, they're going the Fallout route. By that I mean, The Last of Us, even though it made some smaller changes as well as some pretty big changes, for the most part, it's a pretty faithful adaptation of The Last of Us's story, whereas like Fallout is, they adapted the world of Fallout but told their own story in it, and it seems like that's how they're approaching Until Dawn. Which I'm so curious to see if we find out the events of Until Dawn happened in this universe, not unless this is kind of a prequel, but you know, maybe it's like a sequel, maybe it takes place sometime after the events of Until Dawn, and this just happens to take place in the same universe. It's interesting too, because it's like, you would have to like, you could acknowledge Until Dawn without having to choose which ending is canonical, because if you're unfamiliar with Until Dawn, once again, spoilers and stuff like that, but basically it's a butterfly effect game where, hey, whatever choices you make can alter the story in the game and how many characters survive. So you can have a few characters survive, you can have every character survive, or you can have no characters survive. It just depends on the choices you make and how the story unfolds for you, depending on what clues and what information you get, the totems and that whole angle to the story. So that's really interesting how they removed the totem element, which ties into the whole butterfly effect element as well. Like I said, clues as well and choices made, but they kind of switched that for like the Groundhog's Day like loop situation that's going on. So it's like, right, every time you die, you're learning like a clue that could help you survive said situation. Oh, don't make that choice, don't do this and do that. But every time they're dying, a new thing is happening. So once again, it's the butterfly effect of, oh, just because you have this new information, new things and new situations are coming after you. Because I think they did such a good job with the trailer too, because it's initially keeping pace with the game. Initially, it seems like there's a slasher thing. Well, I was about to say, like, initially the cast of characters, as they're finding things out, it seems like, oh my god, there's a slasher thing going on, but then you're like, wait, there's a supernatural thing going on, and you're just like, I don't know what, like, all these threats are happening at once, and they kind of do that. They start off with a slasher thing, and then immediately there's the other deaths involve supernatural stuff. We even see a Wendigo. I was like, hey, so they're here, so they're already established, and obviously, and look exactly like they look in the game as well. So I think that's, like I said, I think it's such an interesting approach, and it makes a lot of sense, especially when it's, the complaint about specifically adapting games that are already very cinematic. When you're able to do something different with them, I think that's what kind of makes them, makes you go like, okay, so it was worth adapting, because you get to just kind of adapt that universe and tell your own story and kind of do your own thing. Like I said, it's such an interest. Like I said, the death loop thing is going to be an interesting thing to see them utilize. I'm also curious about the whole Peter Stormare of it all, because when I was looking at the first look like yesterday, I was like, wait, Peter Stormare's in this? I was like, well, because if you don't know, like, he was in the game too, but he played the role of a therapist, but also in the confines of the confines of that story. It's just like, well, I think he was a real therapist, but it's just like, because of that situation, like, you don't know like how much was real, how much was fake. I mean, I think some of that was real, that stuff from the past. There's probably a lot more clarity for that. I just don't remember there being any full clarifications about. I mean, later on you see like, well, the characters literally breaking down, and the world, their mental state is representing like, mind becoming unraveled as the kind of fantasy and reality is kind of blurring together. So I mean, that's your telltale sign, but I'm like, beyond that, we don't really, so he's either just kind of having this wink and nod appearance in this, or his appearance in is significant, and it does tie into the game, even though, like, because it's like, it seemed like he works at like a gas station versus being so that's why I'm curious. I'm also curious where this takes place, because I had to look it up yesterday because I couldn't remember, but Until Dawn takes place somewhere in Canada, so I'm curious if this takes place in a similar enough region, or is it completely different. Back to the conversation about expanding the lore and stuff, as like I brought up, we have Wendigos, but we also saw like something else like in the mist, and it's massive and giant. There's a creature that looks like how, if you've ever seen the movie Darkness Falls, there's a creature that kind of looked like how the Tooth Fairy looks in that movie, if it's a Tooth Fairy horror movie. There's a creature that kind of looks like that. So like I said, we're dealing with not only just the supernatural threats in this world we're aware of, but even the ones we weren't aware of. So, and using the title convention of, oh yeah, like it's called Until Dawn because the kids had to survive in the game story. It's like, oh, they have to survive until dawn. That's when help was able to get to them, and now they have to do the same thing here, especially when time keeps looping. So it's a little like Five Nights at Freddy's of like, oh yeah, you have to survive a certain, until like morning. Same thing here. But also it seems like they have a limit, because they're like, oh, they look at the guest book listing and it's like, oh, whoever's been here, everyone has died after 13 deaths. So we have unlimited amount of deaths until this all happens. So we have to survive until dawn to kind of break this. So we don't know who's fully making it out of this. Once again, maybe some of them will, maybe all of them will, maybe none of them will. And like I said, I'm also curious to see if there's going to be any winks or nods or ties to the video games other than Peter Stormare being in this. Whatever the case may be, they did a really good job just based on the trailer capturing the essence and feel and vibe of Until Dawn. So while, like I said, just telling their own story, and it seems really, really interesting. So I'm curious to see like the mystery kind of get unraveled, like in the video game, of figuring out like, okay, what is all this stuff, them finding out about the Wendigos, and as well as maybe the lore behind these other supernatural things in this world. So I think that's really, really neat. I don't think any of the other Supermassive games tie into Until Dawn. I could be mistaken, like, because I know like the Dark Pictures anthology, I know those stories are kind of, I mean, those are connected, but I think they're their own thing. Maybe they're not connected, but I know they're kind of their own thing, and I'm pretty sure the Quarry is its own thing, but I could also be mistaken. I'm not as familiar with either of those games, but obviously these are just some of my thoughts. I'd love to get to know your thoughts in the comments down below. What did you think of the trailer? Do you like the fact that they're going with their own story? Would you have preferred that they adapted the story from the actual direct adaptation of the story from the video game? What do you expect from this movie? What do you want from this movie? Do you feel like you're getting all of that based on the trailer? Just let me know all your thoughts. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.